Today I'm going to show you how to make this delicious dairy-free bread and rolls. If you're like me, sometimes you have a hard time finding bread that either doesn't have milk or doesn't say may contain milk. So sometimes what I do is just make some bread for myself. So what I have in my bowl is 3 packages of yeast. So I use 3 of these small packages. I put them in a large bowl, and then I am going to pour in 2 cups of warm water. Make sure that your water is just barely warm. If you get it too hot, it will kill the yeast, and you don't want to do that. So just a heads up to have only warm water. So this is 2 cups of warm water, and I'm just going to give that a good stir to kind of break up the yeast a little bit. Okay, and now I'm going to add 1/4 of a cup of melted non-dairy butter, and I usually just use Smart Balance. And again, make sure that your butter is not overly hot or it will kill the yeast. And then we're going to add 3/4 a cup of sugar. And we're going to stir that really well. Okay, so I just stirred that until you don't really feel a bunch of the grains of the sugar on the bottom anymore. And then I'm going to let this sit for about 2 minutes. So now that we have let that mixture sit for a few minutes, we're going to start adding our flour. And I have in this bowl about 6 cups of all-purpose white flour. In the flour, I've added 2 teaspoons of salt. I also like to add at least 1/2 cup of some whole wheat flour. You don't have to do that, but I just find that it gives it a little better flavor if you add at least 1/2 cup of the whole wheat flour. Of course, you can add more, but I don't like to add too much of the whole wheat flour because then the bread doesn't rise as good. So, okay, so let's go ahead and put the 1/2 cup of whole wheat flour if you want that. And then I'm going to add about 3 cups of the white flour, which is about 1/2 of what I have in this bowl. And then I'm just going to take a spoon and mix that in. And at first you can use a spoon, but as you get more flour, you're going to have to get your hands in there. I just use my spoon when it's still wet like this. I wait till it gets a little more dry before I use my hands. So I just added a little more flour, maybe like another cup, and you can kind of see how it's starting to stick together now, and it's starting to stick to your spoon. And now is the point where when it's not real liquidy and it's starting to form kind of together as dough, this is the point where I start using my hands to knead it together. So I'm going to add some more flour. I just kind of clean off my spoon a little bit. So you can see we're getting close to the bottom of our flour now. And if you feel, you know, that some of the flour is still wet, you can just kind of add it to that spot as you're mixing your flour in to the dough. If the dough feels wet in certain areas, just keep mixing that flour in. And when you get to a certain point, you can just use this part of your hand to knead the dough into the flour. And basically when your dough cannot take on any more flour is when you're finished kneading it. So you can see I still even have a little bit of flour left that I didn't use, and that's okay. Sometimes I use it and sometimes I don't. But if you see that your bread is nice and the flour is incorporated and you've kneaded it, and you know you don't want it real dry, so you don't necessarily have to use all the flour. So at this point is when I would stop, because you can see the flour is incorporated and it's making a nice dough. And so what I do is I just take my dough out, I put it on a little Silpat or a plastic cutting sheet, and then I'm going to empty out all of this excess and clean my bowl out. Now that my bowl is clean, I'm going to put just about a tablespoon of oil. You can put vegetable oil, canola oil, whatever type of oil you like. I'm just doing this so that my dough does not stick to the bottom or the sides of the pan. And then I'm going to put my bread dough back into this bowl, and I will cover that with the tea towel and let it rise for about 2 hours until it doubles in size. Now that our dough, our bread dough, has risen and doubled in size, we're going to punch it down. So to do that, you literally just punch it down. And if it feels a little sticky, you can always, you know, put a little bit of that extra flour in there. So we punch it down, and then we're going to kind of start kneading it and folding it over. And I just kind of turn my bowl as I knead. Okay, and once I have that kneaded, I'm going to divide this in half, and this will make either 2 loaf pans, or what I'm going to show you is I'm going to do 1 loaf, and then I'm going to show you how you can also do rolls with these. So first thing you want to do is make sure that you spray your pan with a non-stick cooking spray. Make sure it's a non-dairy non-stick cooking spray. So to divide this, I just take a knife, kind of cut it down the middle, and I'm going to take about half of this, and I'm just going to form it into a loaf. So this is going to be for the bread, a loaf of bread. I just kind of push it down, and then I'm going to let that rise for a few hours. So we're going to set that aside. All right, you could take this and make yourself another bread loaf, but I'm going to show you how to make rolls. So when you make rolls, it's always easier if you take a little bit of oil and put just a teeny bit of oil on your hands, because otherwise this can get kind of sticky. And you're just going to pinch off about this much, and you kind of knead it in your hands, and then you're going to do what's called just pinch the ends of this, and when you do that, it's going to form a roll. And then you just continue doing that, and you try to make them about the same size. And to make them pretty, you just pinch until it looks smooth on the top, and there you have another roll. So if you notice that maybe one of your rolls is a little small, you can always redo it and add more to your roll. No big deal. This is very forgiving. And I kind of stagger the rolls in between each other. Also, if this starts sticking to your hands, you can always add a little bit more oil to your hands. And I just keep pinching until the top looks nice. This is a little trick that my granny showed me, just that if you pinch the rolls, it makes them pretty when they cook. Now that you have your rolls in the dish, you're going to let these rise for a few hours. So go read a book or relax. Now that our bread and our rolls have risen. We're going to cook these in a 350-degree oven for about 25 to 30 minutes until they look golden brown on the top. And here we have our finished rolls. And here is our finished bread. And here we have our delicious dairy-free bread and rolls. Be sure to like and subscribe for more dairy-free recipes. And check the link below for a printable recipe.